Imagine all your audio entertainment available in just one place. That's what the Audible app is all about. With Audible, you can always find the best of what you love or discover something new. Audible has an incredible selection of wellness titles and originals, like The Light Podcast by Michelle Obama, Work It Out by Mel Robbins, and Confidence Gap by Russ Harris. Membership includes access to Audible originals, podcasts, and tons of audiobooks that you can download or stream as much as you want. And as an Audible member, you can choose one title per month from an ever-growing catalog of titles to keep. The Audible app makes it easy to listen anytime, anywhere, whether you're traveling, working out, doing chores, wherever your day takes you. New members can try Audible now free for 30 days. Visit audible.com/motivation or text motivation to 500-500. That's audible.com/motivation or text motivation to 500-500 to try Audible free for 30 days.
The weather is cooling down a bit. The leaves are starting to fall. Yes, it's that time of year again. Football season. And we all know the best part of any game day traditions are the ones that involve food. There's nothing like having everyone in your game day crew coming together to bring their best bites and argue over whose family makes the best chili. And while there's no need to mess with the perfection of game day classics, like a freshly grilled Oscar Mayer hot dog topped with Heinz ketchup and mustard, it's always fun to step out of your comfort zone and get creative with your recipes. Because there's nothing more fun than adding to your list of game day traditions, like making a creamy and delectable queso dip with Velveeta cheese that can be eaten with so much more than just chips. Now is the chance for people across the nation to find out whose game day eats reign supreme. It's your turn to show off your tasty game day food traditions. Go to www.gamedayfoodtraditions.com to share a photo of your game day food tradition to enter to win $10,000. Once again, that's www.gamedayfoodtraditions.com to enter to win $10,000.
This is Full Change with Tom Laidlaw.
All right, Tom, probably most pumped up about this one because we have the epitome of someone who's made a second career and made it bigger than the first career. So we have a first-round draft pick, author, fighter,
that's right,
podcast host, poet,
as
he starts each show with a poem.
Oh.
And I know you don't watch TV, but we have an actor who's on one of my favorite shows. Well, two of them, actually. Letterkenny and Shoresy.
Oh, you're kissing ass.
We have the host of... absolutely. We have the host of Tales with TR, Terry Ryan.
How you doing there, brother? Good to see you.
Great to see you again, and thanks for the intro. Pump my tires there a little bit, Tom.
No kidding. He was really...
absolutely.
What do you want? Like, what are you after there? Like, you really
I want to get him on the podcast.
Yeah, there we go. You want to get him on again, probably. That's it, yeah. Good. How you doing there, bud? We met each other, how many years ago now? 30 years ago or something? No.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I was a junior hockey player, so
Yeah.
I'm 46 now. It was sometime in those 90s. It's a blur, but sometime in the 90s, Tom.
Yep. So I was working at IMG, and I didn't actually directly represent Terry, but he was working all together. The one thing I'll never forget about you and Brian Berard got in a fight at an All-Star game in Kitchener. Was it in Kitchener? Is that what it was?
And our parents were sitting together because he was IMG
right.
too.
So we were all representing the same people. This is an All-Star game. Nobody gets in a fight in an All-Star game. These two guys that are supposed to be buddies getting a fight. It was a good scrap too. That's good.
Who won?
Well, I thought about it, and it was my draft year was also the lockout. It was a lockout year, 94, 95. So there's some great players, and I remember like Damon Lankow, who ended up going 5th overall. I went 8th, and Brian Boucher, who I think you represented maybe.
Yep.
Went 21st or 22nd. So we had 3 first rounders in Tri-Cities, which was a great feeling to be able to absorb that all as a group rather than one person. I think it probably would have been a little bit more personally pressurized maybe.
Yeah.
But
and then Sheldon Surrey was a second round pick too, right?
Surrey was playing with us. It was an awesome time, and I hung out with those guys in the summer because I would go to Edmonton. There seemed to be a lot of Tri-City Americans / IMG guys up there at that time. So it was a really tight-knit group. But in that game, and I'd met Brian because we were IMG guys. And Brian Berard, you were just said I got a fight with, to give a bit of context to it, Brian Boucher, my junior goalie, they're both from Rhode Island, right?
Yeah,
so
buddies,
they knew each other from Woonsocket, Rhode Island.
There you go.
From Rhode Island, a little spot. So I knew, and I met Brian, but he was rated 1st overall.
Yeah.
In my mind, I was lucky to get into that game, and it used to be the CHL All-Star game. Now, it shortly after that turned into prospects, and people go, "Hey, you got no fight prospect game?" I'm like, no, I think part of the reason that we were successful, they had the prospect game. We just happened to make the team,
right.
And it was split. We had to split with the Quebec League to play the OHL because it was in the O, so it was only 10 of each team.
Oh, that's
so
right.
I thought to myself, I'm lucky enough to get in this game. I can't make myself score, but I did score a couple. But I can make myself go fight, and I got to be noticed, man. And I said it's either going to be Ed Jovanovski, who went first last year, or Brian Berard.
Oh.
And our parents happened to be sitting together, so it was a wild story. But
I remember when it happened. Like, part of me was like really proud. Like, these guys are really into it. The other part was like pretty awkward too. Like, we're all sitting together.
Yeah, well, it was a weird way to do it because then the boys had just won the World Juniors, so a lot of guys in the game not only just played the World Junior, a lot were already in the NHL. It was just happened to be lockouts, and a lot of them. Like for guys like Jovanovski or I don't know, Bill Bowler or David Lee, I mean, these guys 3 years older than me in that game.
Oh, that's right.
Right? So a lot of them, I'm sure that they were like the last thing. Todd Bertuzzi, right, a couple years older, had a ticket signed. Like, what does he want to be fighting for?
Yeah.
But there was enough of us in the game that were clawing at the bit. And give Berard credit, man. As soon as I asked him, he had no qualms, and he played me hard the rest of the game. Chirped me the rest of the game.
Oh, did he chirp you? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I really, really respected the way he played. Didn't fight as much as I did, but he doesn't get enough credit for being as gritty as he was.
Yeah. Yeah, the whole eye thing really slowed him down, too. So where'd you grow up? Where's home?
Mount Pearl, Newfoundland, a suburb of St. John's.
Is that where you are now?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Very cool.
I'm a 30-second, 2-minute tops walk from the house my parents still live in that I grew up in.
Very good. Very good. And were you a good player right away when you started playing?
Not right away, but when I became good at 11, 12, I went to the Quebec Pee Wee tournament, was rated number 1. I had to get out of here early, Tom. That was the thing. By the time I was 14, I don't mind saying it, it's going to sound braggadocious, but I was on fire. We won the All Newfoundland, which is a provincial championship, 16-0. I had 8. We went to the Quebec tournament. I was the big name, so that's when Tri-City were at that tournament, and they invited me out west. I remember from the Quebec people, which was Pee Wee, so I guess I'm 13. I went there both years. First year, I was a good first year. Second year, no one in Canada. I mean it. I was almost as big as I was now, 6 foot, 185 in that tournament. I could skate. The next year I ended up playing junior. Of course, things evened out when everybody. I was a lot bigger than everybody, but I had that talent. It was genetic, obviously. But what happened, Tom, is that I didn't make the All-Star team the first few years, but my dad came home and he was coaching, and there was a great senior hockey league here. People don't, and it still goes on. This is the first year I haven't played, to be honest, and I won't again now. But it's great because we have imports at that time in the late 80s, early 90s. We had, Mario Roberge played here in 91, 92, 92, 93, had a cup with Montreal. Bill McDougall played for Port aux Basques Mariners, got signed by Tampa Bay. The next year set the record in the AHL playoffs. 16 games, 52 points. Wow. In the AHL. The year before, he's playing for the Port aux Basques Mariners. We had Bill Riley played over here at the end of his career, Gordie Gallant. Each team had 4 or 5 imports. So I was going up. My dad was coaching the senior and the junior team he coached, set the record, didn't lose a game. And they went and won the Atlantic Championship, which is now it's all the Maritime Hockey League, and we feed players into it. But at the time, we sent a team, and it was really rare for them to win, but they did. So, and the rink was up the street from my house, so I had all kinds of free ice time. That's the truth. I would go up. I'm an only child, so I would have my buddies. My dad can get us extra ice time. Honestly, if I had brothers or sisters, maybe it would be different. Wow. At first, I didn't love hockey. I just loved my dad, and I was at the rink picking up pucks. And now the team goes off the ice. Dad would say, "Hey, stay out here as long as Ponce Paolo, the Zamboni driver, lets you out here," and he didn't care. He'd let us on until.
What was his name? What was his name again?
You're not going to believe this. His name was Tony Fonce-Faulo. Now listen to this, how it comes full circle. He's a legend. You can look that up, Tony Fonce, Alphonse. They all call him Fonce. He's a legend here. He would wear his tux to the games, to the junior and senior games, be packed, and people loved him. And right now, this is his house. He had a stroke last year, and Fonce, his house, and him and my mom went way back. Mount Pearl now is probably 40,000. Back when it was 20 houses, right? This is one of them. It used to be cabins from St. John. And I'm living, not only that, am I living in his house, I base my character in Shoresy on him. That's who I'm doing. We would imitate him so much, we would be at the rink. Oh, come on, Fonce, let us out on the ice, by Fonce, come on, right? And, go away, young Ryan, go on. I'll give you a half hour. That's it. That's all you're getting, right? And so then we'd stay out there and play more. But I was getting, so not only did that come full circle, but I was getting, oh God, I don't know, between at least 5 extra hours because I lived at the rink. And, you start to get good. It becomes addictive, right? Then we started winning, and we won. My group, you got to be from a good group, man. And we were just into sports all the time. And we won the baseball, the soccer, the ball hockey, and the hockey provincials, got to go to the nationals and all of that stuff. So growing up, it was like we had a group that we were really, really, like I never thought personally about it till I went to Quebec. It was almost sad that I was like, because they were coming down to approach me, and I was like, well, what about Gary Clark and Craig Hodge? Like, they could come with me. They're really, but I started to see that I was a blue chip and I was separating. So anyway, to answer, I'm not sure what you asked. I think I just answered 20 questions in one.
Well, it was great. It was great. It was great having you on the show. We'll leave now.
Well, Tom, also Terry's dad played in WHA too, so he had the bloodline.
I forgot about that. That's right. I did forget about that.
Yeah, right. Dad coached and was my grandfather, guys. This is truth. My dad coached. He was always there for me, and he had that ice time. But he was getting paid to do it, right? And he was teaching. So if I didn't do that, I wouldn't have been around my dad. And I really looked up to him, and I heard the stories. He retired when I was 4 or 5. So I'd heard all the stories, and obviously it's big news in Mount Pearl. And not only did he play in the WHA, he played 1 year, and he set the goals or the shorthanded goal record. He had 6.
Oh,
he didn't do much but kill penalties. It was his first year.
Right.
And when he got his degree, he came back. He went back to Kalamazoo twice, had like 100 points, and he didn't get up and said, screw it. Dad grew up from a poor family, and hockey to him was a vehicle to get his free education. He came back and started teaching right away, which probably people wouldn't understand today, but I do, given where he came from. So, but he knew all about it. But my grandfather, Bill Norris, you see, I give him a lot of the early credit. He died when I was 14, died when I was 14. And, but he's on my mom's side, Bill Norris. He was on the HMS Bulldog that the U571 is based on it. He lost his arm too. He lost it. My pop only had his left arm and he was right-handed, but he was on that ship, the HMS Bulldog, that captured the Enigma machine, I think it was called, that cracked all the codes.
Sure. Yeah,
he was on it. And so my grandfather, and he built my mom and dad's house, what they're living in now, really early on, like before my dad was in the picture. My mom was a kid. It was in the 50s. Then this house, the Fowlos that I'm in now, was just and it was cabins. I guess people were thinking that way, but my grandfather always could seek out a good deal. And what he did then, when Mount Pearl started to be established, he built the Legion, literally built it with his hands and with his hand and his friends that came back from the war, the Mount Pearl Legion there. So they would go up, and each day, these war vets would be telling stories, and much like us ex-hockey players in a room, and they would, and they knew that I was good, and they would come to some games, but it was more hearing about that camaraderie. And, again, I'm an only child, so I was soaking all this up like a sponge. A lot of it was osmosis, but I really remember like learning that team game from them, not really from being on the ice. Sure. I was just this guy who was skating all around, and I started to become real good. And I remember when I did go to BC thinking, how many times that you visualize, and my pop and his friends came up. So there's as much that was off the ice that was kind of, I don't know, like I learned how to be a teammate. And he came to everything, I should mention. He came to all my sports. Dad, if I asked my dad, he would have gone to something. You really want me to be there, Terry? I will. Otherwise, I mean it. Months would go by. Yeah. I don't mean that in any bad. That's just the way Dad was.
Did you realize the impact that your grandfather and your father were having on you at the time? See, I didn't. Like growing up on the farm, I didn't realize all the great stuff I was getting from it. It's later on in life that I realized, man, I wouldn't be who I was if it wasn't for them.
Yeah, you're right. I know I didn't realize any of it. I was ignorant to all of it. I just thought it's what people do growing up.
Yeah.
And when my grandfather died, I had lots of time to reminisce on that. And it was the year that I ended up, later in that year, I ended up going away to play. I played junior at 14, right? And I remember going like, and even that, my dad got a lot of shit, right? Like, I'm 14 years old.
Oh, hold on. We got the cat here. The cat's cuddling up to Terry. That's cute. I know you can't see it on the show, but trust me, it's cute.
My dad got a lot of shit. Like, I was 14, and that year, I don't recall, it's on Elite Prospects, I would think, my Quinnell stats. I think in like 40-odd games, I know I had 200-plus penalty minutes. I ended up leading the team in scoring, but it could have gone the other way. Like if I really had to sack up. I remember I went out there, and it was violent. It was a violent league. There was the BC Junior League and the Rocky Mountain Junior Hockey League. And the Rocky Mountain was where a lot of the guys went to the WHL or just were career 500 penalty minute guys in junior A. Right. And then the BCJ, a lot of those guys went to college, like Paul Correa. So, and at that time, I mean, I went to Quesnel, right? A mill town was, you go out in Quesnel and each night people are going to have steel-toe boots. They're going to be chewing while they're drinking, and you're going to hear John Denver. It's one of those kind of places, man. And I embrace it. I do. I really do.
Right.
I've lived all over, and it was
so.
Really
so when you left home, you didn't go directly to Tri-Cities. You played two years.
That's what happened. No, Tri-City. The draft out west is when you're 14, guys. I didn't know what to do. To go back to my dad, at least he kind of knew. And Dad would have been, he was young. Dad was in his mid-20s when he retired. So I guess he would have been only like 30, late 30s or 40 then, late 30s. So he still had all kinds of contacts. So I remember he did his homework. I didn't know much about it. I went to the Quebec Pee Wee tournament and Chico Resch was there, right? And recommended. For those that live out west or have been out there or scouting, there used to be, I don't know if there still is, a tournament called the Vancouver Super Series, and it was all the prospects from out west. I remember there was a Northwest USA was a team, Northern Alberta, Southern Alberta, Winnipeg, BC, Team Vancouver, all that, right? But there was never been a team from out east, like this far east anyway. So what happened was Tri-City were there and recommended me go and play for the Vancouver team. No. Now, when I came home, because we had John Slaney, who went 9th overall in 91, which would have been around then. And he scored the big goal for Canada in Saskatoon. And there was players here that weren't really John Slaney, but they weren't far off. And we're going, if our one representative in the 80s, and no one, my dad, there was a bunch in the 70s, but the 80s, there really wasn't anybody in the NHL from Newfoundland. So Slaney comes out, someone like me, and I'm going, he's pretty good. And he went 9th overall in the world. There must be players that can just play average in major junior. Sure. There has to be. Sure. So, if he's that good, what about Danny Cleary and Harold Druken? I don't understand this. That's what ended up happening. So we came, when I got back with this invite, my dad said, you know what? I think we owe it to everybody here. You got an opportunity. Let's take a team out there. No. And, because it's not just you. If they could only see, because Danny Cleary is a year younger than me. But his draft year was even younger because he's born late in the year. He was ripping it up like I was. Yeah. So I knew that, and there was a Harold Druken, and then shortly after that, Ryan Clough, Michael Ryder, Adam Pardy, Luke Adam. Then it hit then. But until then, and it's true, we went out, and like I said, I played all those sports growing up, right? So baseball, soccer, ball hockey, and ice hockey, and I'd gone to the Atlantics or the Nationals. Well, the Nationals in each sport at least once. So, and it's funny, because it was the same when we took Team Newfoundland to Vancouver. It was just like all the other times. Play the host first game, so the host wins 8-1. Everybody gets a free piece of pizza, and those Newfies try hard, right? That's what we were used to. But Joe Sakic was there just coming into his own. He dropped the puck. We were in Burnaby, BC. Could have been the Sun God Arena if you're out that way. I think it was called that. And it was packed in the summer, I kid you not, to see us play. And I played a year young. My dad said, I'm a 77 birthday. He said, you go with the 76ers. There is actually a great talent crop. And a guy that you might have had, Tom, I don't know if you ever had Kurt Walsh with you. Yes, we did. He was on that team. There's a direct example. He's from Conception Bay, never would have, and his team wasn't great. So he never would have gotten off the island, never would have gotten seen. That was the first time he'd been on a plane.
Oh, is that right?
So we go out there. He ends up, so fast forward 3 years, he goes 3rd round to Buffalo, and he was pretty good, but he wasn't our best. So it was like that. We had this group of players that were just waiting to be noticed.
That's cool.
So anyway, first game, we tied it up. I tied it up off my ass with about 7 seconds left, and then gave it to a guy. His helmet came off. We put it up. 6-6. It ends. They had a 5-on-3 for the last minute. We held them off. We were elated. We couldn't believe that we went in. And they had got some great players on that team, and now it's 6-6. We didn't win one game. The tournament we lost. We either tied or lost by a goal each one, except the last game. And we played Northern Alberta. It was Ryan Smith was there, Chris Dingman, Lankow, like I said, Sugar Ray Schultz, Jason Parolin was for BC, Vern Beardy, there was Mike Leclerc, a lot of guys that ended up going in the next few years that I'd play against in the Western League. Shane Doan, Jerome McGinley,
that's right, yeah.
They were all playing, and we did well. So long story short, the very last day, it's funny, first time I ever played hungover. So we were from Newfoundland, obviously, Newfoundland Geo Selects, but we never had any program like that over here. So we all hated each other. So it was so great to actually play together, right, and go out there as a group. And we all snuck in. We put our hats on like this, and we put Vaseline and pepper all over our faces. That was my idea.
Is that your idea? Vaseline and pepper.
Do that
That's
back
good.
here at the first few bars I'd been into.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny.
And to look like stubble, right? And we got into some strip clubs out there. We had a few beers. And remember the next day going, boys, the tournament's over. I mean, we're 15 or 14, but I know it's a different world.
Yeah.
But going, okay, but let's do something here. And we knew we had some interest. And right off, the puck dropped against Manitoba, and 5 guys, all of us, dropped their gloves. And the Western League loved it at the time. Now it would be, I could think it would be considered one of the, and it was unsportsmanlike. But given the time, and we knew what it was all about, it was it's a great memory. But right after the game, I will never, ever forget it. There was an NHLer at the time that was in his prime, Bob Rouse, and he came down to talk to us, give us like a motivational thing. And he came in again after and was really impressed. And all kinds of scouts. And I'd say what ended up happening was about 8 or 9 guys off that team. Kurt probably being the biggest, got drafted in the 3rd round. Mike Pittman went in the 6th round to Chicago a couple years later, and a bunch just went and played junior A. So it really did open the door. I give my dad that credit. Right. I wasn't really thinking that way. I'm glad it worked out, but it opened the door. Now, what happened, to answer your question, I'm going long, I know.
No, you're not. No. What are we talking about?
You asked about Quesnel. So now that I'm out there, I had to spend 2 years not in the Western League, and the draft's when you're 14, but I still wasn't drafted yet.
Oh.
So they had to really figure this out. So Chico Resch and Ron Toigo, who owned all the white spots in Vancouver, now I think he owns the Vancouver Giants, I believe.
Yeah.
They took me out personally, and my dad was there. My dad was a teacher. So they gave him a bit of a golden handshake, but legally, of course. He said, all I can do is substitute teach, and you want us to come out here. I'm not letting Terry go on his own when he's 14. The next year he would, but that's what happened. So I remember, quote unquote, Chico said, quote unquote, we'll hide you in Quesnel. So what happened was, and that Quesnel was like, not in Vancouver. It's called Northern BC, but it's technically central. It's not quite up as far as Prince George, but it was a tough league. I went there, guys. I don't really recall. I don't even know if it was meant that I would play on the junior team, but I went to bantam practice again. It was like, it was like shooting fish in a barrel, picking top. So I went then to midget. I was going to play, and I had my cage on, and then guys were going out for the junior team, and I was like, and I don't know if that was part of it. I spoke Portabasque Mariners with Bill McDougall. Ironically, their coach, Ron Coleman, was out there, and he was like, hey, why don't you come out for the junior team? As soon as I put on the half visor, I didn't want to ever play minor hockey again. I was like, this is great. It felt so free. And we had a pretty tough team. And the first, I know we'll get there, so I might as well tell you, but I didn't know what to do. I was a little bit nervous, to be honest with you. And the first game, I got shit kicked. So the second game, I came back, put hot sauce all over my hands, rubbed it in a guy's eyes, kicked the shit out of him, lost my virginity that night, and never looked back.
Hold on. I like the visual of a bunch of 14 and 15-year-old little boys with Vaseline and pepper on their face, hungover, going out and getting a brawl in a game too. That's a good Canadian lad right there, right?
Yeah, it was a fantastic memory. And that's how I know when people go, young people don't get hung over them. I remember specifically, I was 14, man, and it did. I'm not saying we couldn't deal with it, but that was the first time that you wake up and they got the cobwebs. Before I might have had a beer at my
Sure.
dad's fridge or something. I don't really remember.
Right to a strip joint too.
Coming of age like tournament.
Yeah, right to a strip joint too. That's classic. That's a
Canadian ballet.
Yeah, the Canadian ballet, definitely. All right, so you finally get to Tri-Cities, and how does that go?
Oh man, it was so much. So that year, it was great. Now, it was great to be in Quesnel for those 2 years because I had to fend for myself. I mean, I learned how to fight is one thing, but the Western League was a big boys league. And I led my junior team both years in scoring as a bantam, right? 2 of my bantam years, I led a junior team in scoring. So I went in 3rd overall in the West, right? I went in thinking, I've never been cocky. I really respected the Western League, but I went in, I don't want to say too comfortable, but my first camp my first game as a 15-year-old, I got called up. I fought Cale Hulse. I had no problem. And he kicked shit out of me. Big lefty, though. And I got an assist later that game. I think it was in the playoffs. And so I could kind of get a read out there. I'm not saying I really respected the WHL, but I thought that maybe the transition would be a little bit more fluid is the word maybe I'm looking for. So I went in. We didn't have a great team, and to be honest, that first year in Quesnel or in Tri-Cities, 93, 94, it's good. I had some guys from Surrey came in with me. Now Sheldon also was in that team Quesnel, okay, that I just told you about.
Oh.
But what happened was when I went there, it was all fun, the stories I told you, but I had bitten off a little bit more than I could chew. There was no one, even 16-year-olds on the team. Right. So Sheldon called Tri-City and said, "Hey man, you want to Terry to excel, bring in someone that you listed that's, around his age." And that's how Sheldon came in. So I went into Tri-City with him and a guy named Ryan Marsh. So it was nice that way. And the transition as far as like off ice was fine. Even the roughness was fine because other guys are coming in. I'm going in as a 16-year-old. It's my third year junior. Sure. I got like 26 fights under my belt. You know what I mean? Like I'm not worried about any of that. Whereas BJ Young, second rounder, great player from Alaska who would go on to have 58 goals in the Western League with Red Deer. My last year we played together. Great friend, obviously. Get into that later. But BJ, he was coming from Alaska Bantam, right? So I had a head start on all these guys, but we had a bad team and we had a few real assholes on the team. And
on Tri-Cities?
Yeah, at the very first, the older guys that we ended up getting rid of. But I think halfway through the year, Jerry Johansson and Rick Kozebek, our coach and director of player development, they just decided to go all in and traded older guys and gave young guys a chance. But at the end of that year, this is what I mean. I think I had a decent 16-year-old year. I had 33 points, I believe, in 61 games, 176 minutes.
Ooh.
With no 10s counted. They didn't count 10s in the Western League because it was getting out of hand. Yep. So I thought that was a pretty good year. But I could tell that, and because there was times during the year that, I mean, it was our team to run with, and I just thought I had a few chances, and it was on me, but really I could have done better. I really remember thinking that. So I went back. So the first year, as far as transitions, really wasn't much of one. I looked at it as almost an extension. It was my third year junior. Sure. And I should kind of be doing more. That's really what I thought. But I'm used to being the star in Quesnel. Okay, now this is the Western League. And Damon Lankow, who I talked about earlier, he's turning it on. I don't even think he was a draft pick. He's coming in and I'm going, this guy's unreal. So to get back to your question, as a 17-year-old, I come in my second year in Tri-City. Now it's my fourth year junior. But I had to, I believe, not that I never, ever would ask my dad like back then. And he respected the fact that the game had changed. He was never in my ear. But I remember him going like, I don't know if you're a better skater than Damon Lankow. Right. And I remember Bob Laux doing that and going, look, I want to play you and you're a big pick, but if it's center, then you're going to have to go second line. But he goes, you're not a great skater. I think you'd compliment Damon Lankow really well. You're a good fighter. He said, you're a decent hitter and you like to go in the corner first, which I did. So he said, I think it makes sense for you to play left wing, get the puck out the lengths. It'll kind of work. And it did. So it's weird because by the end of my draft year, I'd end up going 8th overall in the world, and people back here who haven't seen me play are thinking, oh, well, of course, Terry was a star here, but I had to change my game. I left here as a finesse centerman. No one even knew I could throw a punch. They think you were nuts for even just saying it. I was ripping it up. Now I go there, and by the time I'm actually drafted, a big part of it, I had 25 fights in my draft year. I had more assists than goals. I had 50, large part playing on Damon's line, but he went from 32, I think, to 67. He led the whole league. Right. So we really complemented each other well. So by the end of my second year, which would have been my draft year in Tri-Cities, it was like the transition had fully taken place. But in between there were some murky grounds that might not look murky on Hockey DB. But I went from a playmaking centerman to a hard-nosed winger. And I also saw it was the age of the power forward. Mm-hmm. I got IMG talking to me. I got hockey cards. I know what people are digging. I know the scouts after games are loving not only that I got a hat trick, that I grabbed Wade Belak after the hat trick, after I had my points. That's what scouts liked, and I just wasn't scared, so I went that direction with it.
Right. So did your personality, was it like it is now when you were playing junior hockey?
Yeah.
So like if anybody knows Damon Lankow, he hardly ever talks at all. Yeah. So you two guys playing on the same line, you had to be looking at you.
Yeah, you would. It's one of those things. Sometimes two opposites attract.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And it really was a what's the word? Our relationship was symbiotic.
Nice.
We really helped each other grow, but it wasn't always verbal.
Yeah. Well, it was always verbal with you. That was Lanks.
Yeah, Lanks went along with it. Lanks trusted me on the ice or off the ice.
Okay.
Right? He trusted me, but honestly, it didn't take a lot to make Lanks happy. You ask anybody,
that is true.
Whoever played with him, Lanks needed a nice stereo, decent.
Give him a fishing rod too. He loves to fish.
Yeah, fishing rod. Likes to go hunting and fishing.
Yeah,
won't say a peep. Likes his PlayStation. Right, like you're a man of simple tastes.
I represented him. I left IMG, and then he came with me. And his best client. I have never talked about anything. His wife would call me once in a while, but low maintenance, signed the contract. That's cool.
Terry, how come you didn't go with Tom as your agent back then?
Because I had Mike Barnett.
So we were working together. He was actually.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, and Barnett had come. So honestly, guys, to go back and intertwine it all together with another short story this time. But when I was in Quesnel and I'd gone out there right off the bat, Mike Barnett had heard about it because, again, Tri-City were going to hide me. And there was a story on TSN immediately, Jim Van Horn. It was called The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And I don't know what the bad and the ugly were, but I was the good.
Right.
And now it would probably be the bad. Junior, but getting in fights. But once that story was on, and it was before Christmas, so it was before the NHL draft. You can get it on YouTube. It was called The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Terry Ryan Moves to Quesnel, I think it is on YouTube. And at that point, I knew the draft was about to happen. Let me think. I think the draft was in January. So that story came on in November and pretty much alerted everybody in Western Canada really what my plans were and what was going to happen. It got a little bit hectic after that, but
right. So you get drafted by Montreal Canadiens, 8th overall?
Yeah.
So you go back to junior for another year?
Yeah. And sorry, Tom. Sorry, wait. I was off. I forgot to finish. Wait. Point being, sorry, you asked me about Barnett. Barnett showed up at my door that year, okay?
Oh, okay.
And that's when he showed up at my door and he said, "I just signed the youngest player I've ever signed, Radek Bonk. Now you'll be the youngest." And my dad's first words were, "If you think Terry's good, go to Harbor Grace, Newfoundland right now and watch Daniel Cleary." I swear to God, that's a true story. Okay. Sorry to cut you off.
That's fine. That's a good story. I like that. Yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I actually went out there when I was working with IMG to see Cleary and his family too. They lived on the Rock. I mean, they talk about Rock.
Danny Cleary is from Harbor Grace, which is Cupid's is part of Harbor Grace, which is the oldest settled European. So I say European because obviously there was indigenous here, but as far as European settlers in the early 1600s, Cupid's, John Guy settled in Cupid's. Right across the harbor it's all part of Harbor Grace, is Riverhead, where Danny's from.
Right. Yeah, it was cool.
And it's the same. A lot of the Clearys go back hundreds of years, right?
Yeah. Okay, so you get drafted 8th overall by Montreal. What happens then? You go to training camp?
Yeah, it was good. Well, I'll tell you, it was humming along. I had a lot of confidence. Montreal were my favorite team. I had no idea I was going to go there. It was funny. I think there was 26 teams in the league at the time. Mm-hmm. And I only remembered 2 teams not interviewing me, and it was Detroit and Montreal.
Oh.
Right. I was in the elevator on the way to my seats, and Doug Robinson, their head scout, says, "Hey, good year. You mix it up. You like to score goals. Smart. Real play with heart and soul." And I'm like, "Yeah." And then he said, "Good Memorial Cup." And I looked at him, and my dad goes, "He thinks you're Shane Doan." And I kind of went with it. I just went with it.
Did he really think you're Shane?
And then 20 minutes later, they drafted me. But the thing is,
hold on there. So the scout thought that you were Shane Doan.
Doug Robinson, their head scout.
And then they drafted you 3rd overall or 8th overall in the draft.
Yeah, and I'd been through like I knew. I don't mind saying it now. It's years later. I knew, if nothing else, at 11, which is funny. That's where Iggy went. But I knew I was going to Dallas. I know it, and I've run into Craig Button since, and he's told me. And not only did it go well with them, but they flew me to Toronto for like a follow-up interview, and all the answers. Like, I just remember acing it. It was like, and their test was like SATs on top of. It was there was.
Right.
The questions were from mathematical to ethical to there was all kinds of different boxes to check. And I remember going, because I was a decent student too, and not everywhere. So I said, this couldn't have gone any better. And they're picking 11. I think I was rated 12, but I was like, and I knew it. They told me. And not only that, Boston gave me a good idea. I was going to go there. They were picking 9. Right. And I remember, I don't know which scout, but they were like, geez, who's your favorite player? So technically it was any one of the above. Chris Nyland, Rick Tocchet, Cam Neely, all those guys that, when Neely was like maybe a little bit up here, Nyland was more, okay, I can try to get 20 goals kind of thing and then mix it up.
Right.
Not to disrespect Chris Nyland, but, with Neely, so I just blurted that out there. I was like, I love playing like Cam Neely. He's my favorite player, and he was one of them. But I remember them going, yeah, with a name like Ryan, an Irish name in Boston, and you like playing like that. And they told me, they said, whoever we pick, we're going to keep him up here all year, and he probably won't play a lot, but that's our philosophy. And they ended up taking Kyle McLaren, who out of all of us was probably the most raw because he was about 6'4", like 170. Yeah. I mean, he was a rake, but I'm not saying it was a bad decision.
Right.
They were true to their word. Now, when I went though, Tom, Montreal were great to me. Serge Savard drafted me, Jacques Demers. Really, the beginning of the end in Montreal for me was immediate. It was unfortunate, but Patrick Waugh, when he demanded a trade and he got traded, everybody got fired, and Montreal weren't really known for picking tough Westerners from Newfoundland either. Right? It was a weird time so all of us, me, Matt Higgins, Brad Brown, Turner Stevenson, I remember going, I don't know if this is great for any of us, and it wasn't. It wasn't. At least not in Montreal.
So what happened then? I forget what happened to you then. Did you get traded?
Here's what happened, man. I was 19. I went back, and I had my philosophy was always, I can't make myself go score, man, but I can grab somebody and I can play with heart. And I did. And 96, 97 would have been my 19-year-old year. I could have gone back to junior, but at the end of camp, Mario Tremblay called me in, and he said, Tri-City are in last place, and what are you going to do? Get more than 50 goals and more than 25 fights? Like, I don't know if we want you doing that. We think you can gain more from practicing up here and going back at the deadline, which is exactly what happened. I did get 4 games in, which was awesome. And I practiced with those guys. I lived with Darcy Tucker. Tucker was hanging out with Corson a lot. Corson I learned a lot from. It was, and Darcy ended up marrying Shane's sister.
That's right.
I was there that whole time. I lived with Darcy. So it was awesome. And I'd go there in the summertime, and then they drafted Aaron Asham. And the plan I remember early on was to have me and Tucker and Asham as a line, with Tucker in the center. That was like more than once brought up to me. So that's what I thought kind of was going to happen. I was kind of excited for that. Now, when I was 20, Tom, so the next year, and I went to Red Deer, I didn't get in one fight. I had some concussion symptoms, so I didn't really. So when I went to Red Deer at the end of that 96, 97, at the deadline, I set the record in playoff for goals for 3 rounds. I had 18 in 16 games. In 16 regular season games, I had 35 points. Overall, I think I had 33 goals in 32 games. So I really couldn't have been feeling much better about myself as a player. And I went in, and in 97, 98, the beginning of camp, when they decided to send me down, I met Michel Therrien, and that changed everything. He was, at the time, do I forgive him? Yes. Would I have been hard to, maybe from his perspective, hard to coach, I guess. I never thought I was, but
why? What happened with him?
Stubborn. I hated him, and he hated me. Okay. Immediately. I'll tell you a couple stories. Again, I was a kid coming in. I could have dealt with this better. And at no point did I walk into his office and go, "Listen, Michel, where are we here? Like, let's." I wasn't mature, and neither was he. He was a first-year coach, I believe, and with some piss and vinegar behind him. He just won in Granby. They hadn't won the Memorial Cup in Quebec in like 20 years, and he just won it. So, and we had some players on there. But he called me in his office once early on, and he said, "I remember me and J.F. Houle and Scott King." Now, J.F. Houle was on my team in Fredericton. His dad was Ray Jean. He was the GM in Montreal.
Sure.
Scott King was Dave King's son. Dave King was the assistant coach in Montreal.
Right.
So and they're both, especially King. King was a big time scorer. JF was a very, very effective two-way player. But neither of them there just because their dads were in the organization. I'm sure it helped when they were drafted there. But anyway, he called us in. Me being a first rounder, and I remember to some degree him saying, he said to King, "Your dad is up there." Yeah, Dave King. JF, Ray Jean Houle, he's your dad. Yeah. Terry, first round pick. And he took a sip of his coffee and he said, "I don't give a fuck who you guys are, you punks. I'll send you down tomorrow."
He said that. He said that to you. Those are the words.
Yeah, that was early on.
Wow.
Yeah, that was early on, and about 8 games in, I'm not playing, maybe 6 or 8. I'm not playing much. And he calls me in his office. But again, I wasn't upset with him for not playing. Like, I really needed to adapt too. I would have appreciated a few more minutes. But my first year, we affiliated with LA's team. So like we were in Fredericton, but we had like Donald McLean, who's my age and was just come down from LA, Eric Belanger, Chris Schmidt. We've half our forwards are from the LA organization. So I don't recall being like upset at the coach I wasn't playing. I just wanted a chance and to kind of, get my feet wet in pro. And it was weird because I'd spent this time in Montreal the year before, but now I kind of went backwards and needed confidence again. And so anyway, he called me in and he sat me down, and Michelle would sit. I'd call him Mike. So what's up, Mike? He'd come in and he'd have his desk and he'd have his chair, and it'd be always like a few inches higher than the chair of the player he was talking to. It was one of those
power move.
He wasn't a small guy. It was like I used to say small man syndrome, but more power move. Like I would expect Napoleon Bonaparte to do that, Right. It was like he was always thinking in war terms or something. You're a soldier, and I'm going to make you feel like one. So, and I had nothing in front of me, just a bare, barren chair, and I'm sitting out maybe 10 or 15 feet away, feeling exposed and vulnerable, right? I wasn't. I'm just telling you that's the setup. Sure. That's the way the setup. So he sits down, he cracks a Coke, and lights up a dart. Okay. So he's looking at me, and like I wait because I don't know what to say first. I mean, and then I thought, like, he called me in here. But now as I'm thinking about it, now we're like 2 minutes in. He still hasn't said anything. And now I'm thinking, okay, this is like a waiting game. Well, fuck him. I'm not going to say anything either. And then I just stared right directly into his eyes. And you know how awkward that is? It's awkward. If I just stare directly into your eyes and nothing else. And I'm like, and so that's what I did. And we just stared at each other. And he took a puff of that cigarette right down to the butt. Get the fuck out of my office. That was it. That was
he had called you into the office.
That was the meeting.
Wow.
I said, what the fuck? I went back out into the dressing room. I went, what just happened, man? And I told a few of the boys, and the guys that had him in Granby just laughed, and they go, oh, Mike being Mike. I'm like, no, Mike being Mike. I don't like that shit. I don't want these head games. Like, I want to know. I'm not saying I didn't fuck up before. I don't know. In junior, I don't know what. We missed curfew by 20 minutes. Skate the line. Show me, Terry, that you want to play. Go rock 'em, sock 'em the next game. Go try to beat Kamloops. Fight Doan. End up with a goal and assist. It's forgotten about, right? There was ways, or just talk to the coach. But this was this weird mind game.
Yeah, and that's a Mike Keenan level dick behavior.
Yeah, well, I mentioned this on Knuckles and Islands podcast a while ago, and that's Tim Stapleton. He had Keenan, and he brought that up. Look, people tell these stories.
Yeah.
That's just what life felt, and I hate all of a sudden, and I love hockey. I just finished playing. The only reason I didn't play senior this year is a 46-year-old.
Right.
And again, no other 40-year-old. We won the Allen Cup 4 or 5 years ago. Like, I'm talking high-level senior. I love playing, man. Put myself out there, hockey fights, whatever, you name it. I never got sick of that. I was always passionate and wanted to go to the rink. And I remember, like, not being able to put it into words, and then one day just going, I fucking hate hockey. That's it. I fucking hate it. And it just became, and the next game after that, so after he did that, he played me a lot the next game, and I got a goal and I think 2 assists, if not 3. Like, I had a big game, and I came in afterwards. I kid you not. He called my parents right in front of him. It was as if the meeting didn't happen that I told you with the smoke. So I went in right after the game, man. He ripped me in his office after the game. I had my gear on, called my parents. He's like, yeah, Terry's doing okay. And I'm like, geez, he's going to be great. And get back. And then the next game, so that happened. I'm thinking everything's cool. The next game, my first shift's with 30 seconds left. And he not only gives me the tap, he like grabs me and like shoves my jersey down so in my net, and he says, you go fight Jeff Ware right now.
Oh, I hate that.
I was so mad. Like, you got to tell me when to fight. And then I looked into it, and he was a bit of a wuss when he played.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, you got to tell me?
Yeah.
And it wasn't. It was a power move, yes, because it was like 7-1 or some shit.
Yeah.
And I did it. I went out there. I go, Jeff, just go down, or because I didn't mind Jeff Ware. I met him at the draft. He was a nice fella. Wasn't very angry.
Right.
Anyway, that shit just happened a lot. And that year, Tom, I had 21 goals and 256 penalty minutes. I said, and again, Chris Nyland was one of my favorites. Those are Chris Nyland-like numbers.
Yeah.
And I said, like, really at this point, and then Tucker gets traded and starts to not only do well, he becomes like a star in Tampa. And then all of a sudden, Brad Brown gets traded. And then Craig Conroy gets traded, and Jim Campbell and Valerie Bure, and they're all doing well. And then the next year I go back and I got sent down again, and I'm like, okay. And I had to deal with it all the next year. And I didn't have the capacity in me to. I should have just gone in, man, and shook his hand. I know a lot of it with Michel now, years later, was an act. That was his tactic to win. But I never really. The last thing he said to me, really, as a player, the end of my second year, I go back. I had 55 games the next year. I think 43 or 44 points, and another like 200 minutes almost. I did my job, man. I'm like, if I can, I kept calling Reggie too. Well, when he would call Reggie, give Reggie all his credit. He would call me, and he wasn't an asshole. Mike was an asshole, but he wasn't a dick. I just disagreed with Reggie. He'd be like, well, you got to improve your skating. And I'd be like, well, trade me. Just, I don't want to be here, but it was just a disagreement. Reggie treated me with respect. And I remember just saying, man, I hate it here. And we were in the playoffs that year, in my second year in Freddie. And there was a guy playing for St. John Flames, Eric Sharon. And Eric was a great, highly touted player, did play in the NHL. I followed him. I think he played on the World Junior team, left shot defenseman, a bit bigger than me. Really respected him. And he missed like the last 20 games with a kidney problem, maybe even 30. He had this major kidney problem, and he was just coming back into the lineup. And the place was sold out, and it was their first game of the second round against us. And, they announced his name, and the place went crazy because he was coming back from a kidney problem, right? And that's when Mike looked at me and said, take the wind out of their sails and go fight him right now. Jesus. And I went on the ice. And I can't believe I did it, but I grabbed him, and I regretted it immediately. And I was talking to him while I had him on the ice. I said, I'm sorry, man. This isn't me. This isn't me. I went off, and I think I got suspended for giving that one to the fans. Meanwhile, it was the mic. And I went in, and I took off all my gear. They said, I'll never.
So just so everybody knows that can't see, he gave him the finger to the crowd.
Yeah. It was the only suspension I recall ever getting. Right. And I believe that was in St. John coming in. Now, look. I came in off after. I never really got a chance to resolve it with Michel Therrien because I didn't go back. Réjean Houle offered me to go back to camp. They offered me the qualifying offer. They had to give me a raise, and they did. Right? I just was under the impression that I would only go back to Quebec. Reggie made it seem like I would be the first call-up. I thought that was a bit of a slap in the face, but at the same time, if I did, they had a record number of injuries. Aaron Asham got into the NHL that way. Matt Higgins that year. So... And really, I was tripping over my bottom lip. I should have handled it better. And I totally forgive Michel Therrien. I know that most of it was tactic. It's unfortunate because I finally got free, and I went to Dallas, and I hurt my ankle in camp. And it was a high ankle sprain, and I didn't have 3 years to wear. And it kept coming back because I was trying to sign a contract, and I just fucked it up. And to be honest with you, when you asked what happened. So there ended up being an egg on my face because of that decision. I didn't want to go back. And I really, really do take as much responsibility because I could have handled it much better. I could have spoken with Mike. I didn't like his tactics, but I didn't even let Michel. I didn't even really run to the GM. I didn't tell Reggie about most of this. Yeah. Mike would smoke on our bus. Everybody knew he was ignorant. Right. He wasn't. That wasn't a secret. Right. So I figured he's that open about it. Then that's what they're going for, I guess. Right? They want. Right.
So just as everybody understands, so they gave you a qualifying offer. So back then it's a little bit different. They give you a qualifying offer. They don't have to. They could just release you, but they gave you that qualifying offer with the raise. You don't have to accept that. You did not. You're a free agent at that point. Now you're down to Dallas without a contract, trying to get a contract.
I went to St. John's first. St. John's played for the Maple Leafs, which I was basically, I guess you could say, I wasn't on loan, but I signed with the city of St. John's. I was waiting. I hadn't signed with Montreal. It was a lot of bullshit, and I realized, too, when I was playing with the Leafs, because I hadn't changed as a player, but I'm not going to play ahead of a prospect. They got a guy, Adam Mayer, I remember. Say Kevin Adams was there. I mean, there's lots of great players there. Sean Thornton. I ended up playing, for the most part, with Thornton, fighting a bit, third, fourth line, which I'm not complaining about, but I realized when I went there was something positive to being in the Montreal system because I'm owned by them. So at some point, like I said with Therrien, when I say those things, people thought, oh, Montreal didn't give you a chance. No, that's the thing. Yeah. They didn't. I think they were going to. I just hated Michel Therrien. I had stats under him. It wasn't that he didn't play me. I just didn't like him. right? So put that into perspective. I would have played more. I kind of talked myself out of it. Like I didn't go back. So it was nothing that the Montreal Canadiens did over. They treated me really well up there, man. I got to make some friendships for life. I still go up. I went to an alumni a game last month. I took my daughter to her first game.
I saw that. Yeah, you had alumni.
And I sat with Reggie got me tickets to the alumni, and I sat with Gilbert Dion. And the time before that, I sat with Reggie. Like there's no hard feelings. Trust me. I'm happy to have worn the crest. Michel Therrien was ignorant. I wish I could have dealt with it better, but I totally forgive him, and I assume he learned a lot. I mean, he's still in the game. He coached for a while. Everybody learns. It was a bad timing on my part.
Yeah, Terry, it sounds like for like a layperson, they just suck the joy out of your job.
Yeah,
and, you once that's gone, it's hard to keep doing it.
It is true, and what's funny is I'll tell you guys. There's my athletic career. I look at in two different parts, and this part one was about to end here. The stories I told you. But after I hurt myself in Dallas, I went to Boise. My last 2 years pro, you can look at those teams I played on. I was shooting it with cortisone, and I said, fuck it, I've never been a free agent. And I wanted to go to Cincinnati. I wanted to go to Orlando, Boise. I like those places, Colorado Springs. So I signed there knowing that I would be done. I was borrowed time because of my ankle, but I knew I was never getting back to the show anyway. And I liked those places, and they gave me a great minor league deal to play. I played my last pro game in Orlando. We won. There's more to life. But after it, the coach for Ball Hockey Team Canada, George Gortzos, phoned me. And I owe so much to George Gortzos, man. He called, and ball hockey in pockets of the world is big. Newfoundland it is, but I could never really play the high-level nationals because if I get injured, I think it would have been stupid to be an NHL prospect and get hurt playing ball hockey in the summer. So, but after that, he said, I know you're a good player. And with the World Championships, this was 2003, or in Sierre, Switzerland. And he said, I think you should come. And, and he goes, you got to play in the Nationals, and then you can go. So I played the Nationals, and I was pretty good. And it didn't hurt when I ran. For some reason, the high ankle sprain, it's because the skate boot is so locked in. Yeah, but when I got low-cut shoes, as opposed to high cut, I didn't really feel it at all. So I went and we won, man. And I got one shift in the championship game, and only when we made it 3-1 over Czech Republic. And I was crying on the bench. I just couldn't believe it. I'm going to get a world championship ring. And he called me in and he said, Terry, look, I didn't have you here for this tournament. Because I said, I figured, because I'm not good enough to be on the team. But he said, you are, but you're raw. But he said, it's every 2 years, and I want you to come back in 05 ready. And he said, you're going to be 05, 7, 9, 11. We're going to have you. You're going to be part of this program. And he said, you're a renegade. And he said, you're very misunderstood because you're so out there. And he goes, like as soon as we got over to Switzerland, we get on the beers. First day, right, with George. First day and last day. It's a ball hockey tournament. You got to hydrate, so there's no booze and jeering. But, I got up on stage and I'm singing and dancing. And he goes, that's it. He goes, you're just so out there and you're like a caricature. But he goes, you need that leash. And if you can promise me that you're going to be smart and you're going to train. And I did. I said, Jesus, yes. What do I have to do? 05 went back and we won it. Alexander Burrows was MVP, one of the best players in the world. And 07, I was an all-star. And now I'm going to the World Masters for my 8th, I think, World Championship in August in Buffalo. And probably my last one. It's over 34, but most guys tend to be in their 30s for it now. So I'm getting up there. But it's going to be my last tournament. But that's how much ball hockey I became a ball hockey player, for lack of a better way to put it. I'm in the Ball Hockey Hall of Fame. I never would have thought.
Come on, are you really? Wow.
In Canada, yeah, wow. CBH. So, and Newfoundland, we got a national championship in there in 2010. Teddy Purcell played on our team. Adam Party, a bunch of pro guys. So we it's a thing. People, I'm not talking just like street hockey on a cul-de-sac. It's there's a IHL or ISBHL, the International Street and Ball Hockey Federation. The Worlds last year were in Czech Republic. Like I said, they're in Buffalo now. You represent your country. I think at some point it'll probably, the more people technically play ball hockey than ice hockey because you just need a stick really and a ball. So, but I couldn't do anything else, and I was still kind of competitive. So I give George that credit. But that's what he said to me. He said, Michel Therrien didn't really get you, but he didn't try to, and I didn't get him. And I didn't try to. So,
and it's easy to look back now and say you should have handled it differently. But when you're a young person like that, you just, you don't know. There's no experience. All right. So let's get to the really important stuff here.
Yeah.
The movie star. the book writer.
Well, hold on. We got to, because Tom doesn't watch TV. So when we get to that, I'll have to coach him through this. So you'll have to tell him, Terry.
Yeah, that's where we're going. Okay, so what happens? Okay, so you quit the game. Now all of a sudden you turn into this world famous like John Wayne character, right?
Man, there's such
So
you know what happened?
Yeah,
I was so depressed. I was told, and I had the bad ankle, so I was going to go to Europe. Like, it wasn't just NHL to me. I was like, I can see the world for free. And the last year in Orlando, I really, we won, but it was the Atlantic Coast League. I shot it with so much cortisone in it. So I was going to go overseas, and my lawyer here said I was waiting on a settlement, which I didn't get because I played those 9 games in Orlando and then playoffs. So stupid. I'd already signed my retirement papers. I had like $2 million from insurance, and I didn't get any of it.
Oh.
But I was still waiting on at least some of it. And
so you had disability insurance, career-ending disability insurance.
Yeah,
but you played. Okay.
So that's why I couldn't go to Europe. So I was really upset. So I came home here for the first year, and I didn't play senior hockey or anything. I put on weight. I got divorced. So right now I don't know, 200, in my ball hockey. I'm usually don't go under 190, and I don't go over 200. But that year I got real big. I ended up going on a local reality show, losing the weight, and I got a job with Red Bull, and I was a territory manager. And nothing against Red Bull, I wasn't ready. I was remembering these things like the ingredients in the can and these sales pitch. I didn't mind being on the golf course. I didn't mind. I ended up being a good sales rep because it sold itself, and I would just give me one-on-one, and I love having a conversation. Yep. But I don't know. I was stacking shelves, and I didn't see myself there. I was like 24, right? A first-round fucking pick. I'm not below it. I'll work hard, but it was just a lot to be going into the fucking Loblaw or Dominion and stacking shelves, and
sure.
And it was sales rep, but it was also like on premise and off premise, the distributing and all that. So anyway, I was doing that, and I went to Bentley, Alberta for a year, 07, 08. Anyway, I went out there for 1 year and played with the Bentley Generals, and we went to the Allen Cup final, and they paid me well. They gave me a job on the side, but I realized I'm only got this job because I can play hockey. So at around the same time, this was 2009, and the Canadiens office called, and I can't remember the ins and outs of it, but I had some money in my contract due to you guys at IMG, so thank you, that I didn't even know about, that went towards my schooling if I went to school within like a dozen years. It was something like that. Sure. So they were like, if you start in September, you can get, 3 or 4 years of schooling paid for or whatever. So then I was like, okay, I had no idea, and I had no plan. I just had moved back over here to Newfoundland. So that's it. I went into school, and I didn't know what I was going to do, and I gravitated. And at the time, I had all these journals, and I was being hired to public speak, for lack of a better way. I mean, I put myself out there. I mean, I really didn't. I was playing senior hockey. I was at odd jobs. I went back to Newfoundland. I didn't have my Red Bull job anymore, so I was doing some public speaking. And I had all these journals. Being an only child, everything that I've told you so far, when I would leave to go away, my dad and mom would always make me read or write for at least 10 minutes a night, usually turned into a half hour. Didn't matter what it was. It could have been Rolling Stone magazine, and it could have been writing, I don't know, sonnets for all they cared. They were just like, it was a good creative. So I had, so it ended up being just like, after games in Tri-Cities, if I had a big game or if I met somebody, I won't say a diary every day, but I kept journals. It would really help with the anxiety more than anything of being homesickness and stuff. So, but I had stacks of them. And now at this point, it's like the day I played against Wayne Gretzky, right? It's like crazy stories here. Even the story about IMG, everything I've told you so far, most of this is in my first book. So I was making a book. So when I went in to see the academic advisor, like 2.5 years, and I took 6 courses straight through the summer, six. I didn't take any time off whatsoever. And I loved the whole process of going to school. Now I'm in my early 30s, and I'm really enjoying it, as opposed to trying to get the courses done before happy hour, when you're 20. So, and I was learning a lot. And she said, well, you got 42 courses. You only need 40. But she said, you need another 3 in your specific field. I said, well, what am I close to graduating in? And she said, you've got a double major in folklore and English if you want to go and do those courses. I said, okay. Folklore is storytelling for the most part. I mean, a lot of things are folklore. The first class in university is just defining the word. But for what I was doing, it was like, you know, Newfoundland, you get those hundreds of years people have lived here with no electricity on the shore. You must have some storytelling skills and, you know, entertaining. Everybody's kind of a performer. So I kind of went at it from that angle, but it was helping me to tell these stories. And then English, obviously, I started with grammar and then creative writing. So now I had my journals with the knowledge of, I almost had a degree, and people were calling me to write this story, this book, a Doubleday Publishing even. They had a ghostwriter lined up, and everybody wanted to hear the negative side of Montreal because they looked at the games played and they looked at me, and maybe they heard some about Michel Therrien, but I still really enjoyed my time in Montreal. You know, I guess on Hockey DB, it wouldn't look like that. But I spent over 3 years there. I had a place downtown. Like it was transcended hockey to me. A lot of my friends were there. So I said, I'm not going to hear it. And they wanted me to sell out some players. And I was like, I just don't want to do that. So ECW called me from downtown Toronto. They were like, we hear you want to put a book out. Can you send in some chapters you got written? So I sent them just parts. I said, these are all parts of my journal. And they said, this is great. And I gave them my idea. And they said, you can write it any way you want to.
Oh.
And, but I didn't get the big bonus or anything. I got an advance. But anyway, so that's why. So now I came out. Now it's 2012. And I come out and the book ends up coming out in 14. So that was a process, but I had a folklore degree, and I got accepted to go back and do education like my dad did, became a teacher for almost 30 years. But part of the story, I didn't tell, you know, my buddy BJ Young passed away, and I took his son here. I was raising his son, and Tyson, I guess, was 9 or 10 then. And, you know, I had to, and I had a daughter on the way that wasn't really planned, but I had a lot of responsibilities. So I didn't want to wait 2 years and try to get into education and these odd jobs. So my buddy Alan Hawko ended up being on a Canadian TV series. Well, it was going on at this time called Republic of Doyle. And it was shot right here. It's the biggest thing to that point that ever happened in St. John's in Newfoundland to the film industry. And he was playing the main character. And he picked me up to go to a tournament in Toronto, just a bit of fun for the arts community. And I just made a joke. I said, well, you know, I'm looking for a job. He said, really? And he said, well, if you want it, but he said, it's jump how high. You'll be a production assistant, which I did for 5 full years, guys, before anything else. 5 full years. And I talked myself into some stunts, and then I became a set dresser. And then, and only then, did I start to get some opportunities. It's like anything, man. Like, you know, at first it was like, hey, Hawk, can I have a background day? And he's like, yeah, but you know, you'd be a production assistant. And I had to go in first and leave last. There was no day that I was working, and you work for like 4 months, then you take a month off, and then you work another 3 months. Like, it's a lot of hard work. And I wasn't in any of those days in for anything less than 15 hours. It was locations, production assistant, the bottom of the barrel. But I stuck with it. I didn't really mind it at all. It was decent money. And then I just worked my way up. Now, what happened, guys, is I did that on that show for a few years. I was there for season 3 to 6. And a couple times a plane didn't get in with the stunt guys on it, and there was a stunt required. And I used to be at the stunt guy, James Binkley and Glenn Redmond, and stunt guys, and be like, come on, I fought Domi at center ice 3 times, and I can't fucking roll down a hill? What the fuck? And they were like, Terry, you know, you got to be in the union, you got to this, which you did. But a couple times, right, I don't know what happened. Planes got fogged out or whatever. The main stunt guy, they moved him to a slot. Boom, I got a pool cube snapped over my back, and I did a car roll once. So I got in. There was 2 things.
You're in.
So, yeah. So, but now I'm not in the union. I just got in. So there was more of a bucket list. But what happened in 2015? Same people are involved. They bring a show here called Maudie, and it's about Maud Lewis, and a painter. It's slow, but it's deadly acting. I highly recommend it. Sally Hawkins and the great Ethan Hawke.
Oh.
So we're doing this movie, guys, and I'm crew. I'm crew, man. I'm locations. So we go to a place, Keels, Newfoundland, which is out by Bonavista. That's where Michael Ryder and Adam Party are from. A small little spot. But it's a great place to film. And they often, Newfoundland gives great tax breaks, and we've got it set up that, you know, fishing kind of, we went for a long time, and we had the cod moratorium and everything, but there's a big film industry here now, and a lot of it takes place. If you see like the outposted shoreline Newfoundland commercials and those kind of things. They're usually coming from that area. So we went out to a place called Keels. Now there's only about 20 houses in Keels. We couldn't get into all of them. So the actors that had to be there in the morning, we were shooting in this little cove. It was doubling as Digby, Nova Scotia. So because I'm basically, I'm there because I'm going to be the first one in. There's no way around. I'm going to be the first one there. I got to make sure that everything's set up when the director gets there, when the actors get there, that the tents are set up and everything, and we can go ahead and proceed. So I'm staying right next to set, and the only people that are there are the actors and maybe the director, maybe the camera guys. I can't remember, but there's not everybody. Most people are going back to Clarenville or Bonavista. They're staying 45 minutes away. So it's the end of the first day shooting, man, and it's late. It's a warm day in October. It's like 20 degrees. We often get that. The seasons come late, but they leave late in Newfoundland. So the sun's going down, man, huge. I'm sitting on the edge of a cliff, and I'm dead. It's like 20 degrees, and I've walked 30,000 steps that day if I walk one, and most of it was shit all over me, right? We're changing locations. And it was challenging. It was 1920s too, so all the cars that were driving are like Model Ts and stuff, and they won't work. A lot of stress involved in this. So anyway, I sit there on the side of the cliff, and I had a bottle of Jack Daniels. That was one of the boys had. I grabbed it, and I put it there, and I had half a joint. And I lit the joint, and I took a sip of Jack Daniels. And up walking behind me, I thought it was one of the boys. I turn around, and it's Ethan Hawke. And he sits down. Now, the first day of shooting, which would have been about 3 weeks before this point, I'm walking by the green room. I have to set up the green room for them, which is where the actors go to wait for the next scene. So normally, you're told not to really talk to them. And I used to think that was pretentious, but it's because they're remembering lines and stuff, right? So I get it now when I'm an actor. I hate being that guy, but sometimes you got to listen. You got to try to remember your lines, and you want to be left alone. So it's kind of a no-no to just go over and start talking to them. But I did leave my book, Tales of a First Round Nothing, which just came out, on his chair in the green room. So
nice.
He comes to me, sits down, and goes, "I love the book." I said, "Are you fucking kidding me? You read it that short?" And now here's the thing. In Montreal, Kiefer Sutherland would come to a lot of games. That's his good friend. So I remembered being in a bar, Bonanote, a bar restaurant. Anybody came through the NHL at that time would remember the Bonanote on St. Laurent Street. So I remembered being in Ethan Hawke's company. I knew he wouldn't remember me, but now that he's read the book, I mean, he's mentioned in there. So he's like, "Oh, yeah." And anyway, he goes, "It's about the journey. It's not always about games played or whatever." He tells me about his buddy that's coaching at Texas A&M football. And he says, same thing. He had an opportunity to go to the NFL a bunch of times. He said, "I think you should try acting." I said, "Well, right now, easier said than done." I said, "Right now, I'm greasy, I'm tired, and I have to get up and make sure that all this shit's set up for you. So I don't know what world you're living in." And he said, "No, when we get back." So I went out with Ethan Hawke one night, man. We came back. I took him out on George Street. And about after 4 or 5 drinks, doubles, I worked it up. I called Alan Hawko. And they were doing a show. They were about to do a show called Frontier, which changed my whole life. And Jason Momoa was set to be the star. And I sat there that night, man, with Ethan Hawke. I said, "Fuck it." And I called Hawko. I said, "Look, I know I'm not in the union, but can I audition for anything here?" And he laughed. He said, "Well, I wouldn't be the one to talk to, but it can't hurt to have options." And he laughed. And he set me up with the casting director, Danielle Irvine. And I went in, guys, to do it. And I was horrible. But I went to take a sip of my coffee. This show, Frontier, it's on Netflix. The show takes place in the late 1700s. It's to do with a lot of the British redcoats coming over and using force to take over and fucking over a lot of the indigenous on their fur trades and stuff, like whatever it would have been. Now, that's loosely. There are also underlying stories, but that's the time period and that's the setting. Hudson's Bay, redcoats versus anybody native to this land. So I take out my tooth. I do the audition as a British cook with a British accent. I sucked. I'm not just saying it to be humble.
Go on, do the British accent. Come on, let's do it. Here.
I can't even remember. Give me a sentence.
Tom,
Hello,
Tom.
folks. Is anybody hungry? Like that.
Well, way over the top.
I didn't even really think about it. I got there, guys. I didn't realize till I was there. I would have just remembered it. I would have remembered it phonetically. Right. But I got there and I didn't realize it had to be British. So when I walked in, I was defeated. I was horrible. But the thing is, the camera's there. And the camera's looking at me. Daniel Arven is in there, and the guy I'm reading my lines with, Paul Wilson, is in there. So it's two people, but the camera, I don't realize, is going back literally to Hollywood. Republic of Doyle wasn't Hollywood, but Frontier is Jason Momoa and his production team, and they teamed up. So it's part Take the Shot Productions from Newfoundland, and it's part Pride of Gypsies from Jason Momoa and Hollywood. So they're looking at this. I don't know that. So I'd take out my tooth, like take a sip of coffee, and basically say, is there anything else? Because that was horrible. And they say, you know what? There's this. The director talks to Daniel, and his name is Brad Payton. He's actually from Newfoundland, where I'm playing senior hockey that year, Gander.
Right.
And he says, why do you have no tooth? Are you Hawko's friend, the hockey player? And I say, yeah, man. And so we just picked up Aaron Asham, my good buddy, came in from New York the year after being in the Stanley Cup final. Ash is playing in Gander. I love it. One of my good buddies. And so he says, yeah. And he talks to Danielle, and Danielle says, just be by the phone. I'm going to call you in a bit. I haven't gotten home yet. I'm driving. And she called and said, there's this part at the very beginning, which it's 5 seconds into the show. I end up getting it. And it's a British soldier begging for his life. And all I have to do is say, please have mercy. Now, that's a little easier. I have to do in British, but please have mercy, right? And that's all I got to do. That's it. Right. So, and they're loving it because I think, I've never talked to anybody about it, but from their world, why would they fly in a professional stunt person?
Sure.
To and I just was on my knees and I get my throat slit. That's the gag, right? So, and she calls me, I go out and she's like, can you cry? Because you're begging, you're not only begging for your life here, like Momoa's about to kill you, there's a fire, like the ambiance. This is the teaser. This is the very, 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 very beginning of the show, and you've got to do it. And I did it. I went out to her place and I pulled it off, what they wanted, and then boom, I got a part in this major show. I'm like, fucking rights. I know I'm going to get killed after 5 seconds, but whatever, I'm in this thing. And Momoa finds out that a third credit, I already got 2 with the stunts, gets me in the union. So now he's loving it. And I think maybe they wanted to have me have no lines at first, but he helped have the lines in there. So anyway, I get there and it's 3 British soldiers caught in this camp. And so Momoa, the play is that you'll see when you watch, but he comes up from behind me, whispers in my ear, something I don't want to hear, and slits my throat and I go down. That's the play. Except 3 cameras are staring at me, and behind the cameras are all the crew. And there are people that I've worked with for 5 or 6 years now that are going, fucking rights, T-Bone's getting a chance, right? Like a lot of crew don't make that jump. Right. Everything happens, I'm meet Ethan Hawke. I know I kind of got a chance because I'm hockey. See, hockey, I can't get mad at hockey. It's still paying off. Yeah. Created all of this. So anyway, I get there and I can't fucking believe it. So Momoa comes up to do it and he pokes me with his knife by accident. He comes close to me and I still haven't seen him. I can just hear him talking behind me. And he says, oh, sorry, I hit you with my knife. I said, I thought you were just happy to see me. And everybody started laughing. And the director came down and he knelt beside me. He goes, this is the start of the show. I need blood. I need sweat. I need snots. I need tears. And it's true. Like my face is mangled. That's part of how I got it too. I have no tooth. It's hard to reproduce that in hair and makeup. But if I only got to say 3 words and it really helps Momoa knocked out my teeth, right? So anyway, he kneels beside me and he goes, you're not begging for your life. You're begging to be killed immediately because you don't want to be tortured. You're saying, please have mercy and end me now. And he goes like this, the whole show is based on this. So he's like, how much time do you need? He goes, I need you to cry. And Brad's like almost, now I can tell it's like a coach who's upset. You went out there at 8-1 on the power play fucking around. And he's like, hey, we need goals for and against here, motherfucker. So like, it's like, okay, he goes, how much time do you need? I said 30 seconds. And he looked up at everybody. He goes, okay, give TR 2 minutes. And he goes, everybody shut the fuck up. Now you could hear a pin drop. All I could hear was the scene behind me, the fire going. And I could hear Momoa walking around. And I'm like, Jesus. So now I'm going, okay, 3, 4, 5. I go, I got to get there. I got to get there. How do I get there? I'm still like elated. And I started to think of the worst possible things, my daughter or whatever, or something bad happened to a family member. And none of that got me there. What got me there to cry anyway was like, or get emotional. Because now I know it's you get to an emotional and then it's breathing. If you breathe really deep, it'll just flow out of you. So it was almost the good side of it. I was like, of all that shit that happened, And I felt like, this is a second chance. Like Jason Momoa is about to fucking slit my throat on a major TV show after all that shit. And all of a sudden, the power play breakout in the AHL didn't seem important, right? Like, right. And I'm going, wow, I get another chance. And it was like, what? And the whole emotion of being back to some degree with a chance at another career in such a big stage was like, that was overwhelming. And it got me there. And then once we had it once, we redid it a bunch of times, right, for all the other. But once we had it once, Brad was like, fucking rights, T-Bone, you got it. I was like, oh. And then Momoa came down. We had a great time. I taught him to play hockey. Oh. And he took me to Europe for 3 months. His personal assistant bailed out I shouldn't say bailed. She had some serious things going on at home, and she took a 3-month leave of absence. And he said, do you want to be my assistant and be on my stunt team for 3 months? He put me in a couple of movies. And then in season 3 of Frontier, I was a prominent character. I came back and different look, of course, because my throat was slit. But anyway, got to know him well and got me some credits. And I was telling this story a few years ago on some podcast, and Jarek Kiso was listening, got me in on Letterkenny, and then had the idea for Shoresy. And of course, once I got in the union, we have 4 studios here that I know of. I was just finished a movie with the Lifetime Network. There's a bunch going on here now. So the timing of this was great, because when Republic of Doyle happened, it was only that. And now, there is an actual, you can make a living here as an actor.
Wow.
Awesome.
So that's your career now then? Acting is your career?
Maybe, yeah, it would be. I mean, I'm not too far away, because podcasts and then, public appearances of varying degrees help. But I mean, it all really stems from the acting. If I didn't have those things, especially not Shoresy, right? I mean, a lot of people don't even realize that I played hockey. They just know Ted Hitchcock. They're like, what? Like when okay.
I do. That's what the funny. I watched that video, the Ted Hitchcock thing. When they say it sounds like
it's just wild. Yeah, Jared really did me a favor there.
Can we say that on there?
You absolutely can say it.
So say that line. Like,
well, the gag is that. So every single time they introduce me, they say, this is my buddy Ted Hitchcock. And it's kind of funny, because when you say it fast, it sounds like 10-inch cock. So,
I saw that video and I was dying laughing.
Yeah. And it's every time I get introduced.
Oh, is that right? Oh, okay.
It's well, yeah, sorry, pretty much. But what you saw was, I think you saw the clip that I posted there. That was the first time. But in the show,
it's a great show. It's a great show, Tom. You got to watch TV and you got to watch this show.
I will.
You really, honestly, guys, of everything, I would never sit there and say, like, I take pride in my hockey playing, right? But I wouldn't say, we got to come see me, or my book. You don't have to but this I happen to be part of, honestly, and I highly recommend this show.
Awesome,
I think it's just it's so brilliant.
Yep.
And to be involved and to be asked to play this and I know now the way it works. Most actors don't get to be they go their whole career and might be successful actors, but they don't get to be a main character on a recurring series, which I realize how lucky I am. If it all ended now, I would be elated. So I'm really living the dream here.
Do we know if there's any other hockey players that have gone on to be actors after their careers? I don't think
I know. Well, like Sean Avery does a bit. I don't know how much.
And Tom, you did a guest spot on Survivor, right? What, 4 episodes?
5 episodes.
Yeah.
Oh,
I don't know, guys. I'm the only one I know of. I'm with an agency now in downtown Toronto, Ambition Talent. And I know Avery does it here and there.
Yeah, no, he's not a full-time actor. No.
But I don't know if there's nobody in with me, or, these guys got a finger on the pulse. There's not a whole lot of people. No, there's some guys that played like junior that got into stunts.
Right.
Like, I come across them here and there because there's only so many.
Right.
And
I think like Larry Playfair's nephew is doing some
he does it on Letterkenny.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, is he with? Oh, okay.
Yeah, PK does a little bit too, a little bit of stuff.
Oh, that's right.
He's our worlds crossed a couple times. I don't know where they're going to go with it. I would have to think at some point the Letterkenny crowd's going to meet up with the Shoresy crowd. I just don't think they want to jump the shark too early, and I don't know but it seems like that. I mean, it's the same world. There's little parts that are overlapping.
Right. Yes, it's a great show, Tom, and anyone listening should watch it. Tom, this is your life. It's Canadian farm boys in Ontario, and it's hockey, and it's what you grew up with.
I have watched some clips. They are pretty funny. I watched the one clip where these 2 guys showed up with the girl, one of the girls, one of the guy's brother, and they get going back and forth about it. It was hilarious, though. Yeah, it was
that one where he gets caught cheating. That was the hardest. That was hard to. It's the only show, honestly. Normally, a show might come off as funny, but you've done it so many times that it's easy to get through, but it's really tough to get through the scenes on Shoresy without laughing. And,
that's good stuff.
The great thing about Shoresy too, for me, is that Jared and the writers, he writes most of it. There's writers. They're not too experienced with Newfoundland. They are like Jared watches Coldwater Cowboys, which is think it's very similar to the show that like the Alaska crab fishermen a few years ago.
Sure.
It's that sort of thing. Coldwater Cowboys, just based in Newfoundland, same sort of, same kind of show. So, but the thing is, there's lots of dialects in Newfoundland, right? So I think one of my first lines, a lot of people in Newfoundland drop an H. So center ice would be center heis, right? And you might say apple is happle. Yeah.
And don't they finish sentences with Nespa in some places?
Some places they do, right?
Like Darren Langdon was a client of mine as well, and his parents, when they were talking, they go Nespa.
He's my guest tomorrow on my podcast.
Oh, is there Darren is? Oh, good.
Yeah, just did an alumni tour with them.
Good. He's a good man. Yeah, he could
great guy. Langer's from out west, which would be complete. Yeah, talking to Darren Langdon, you can tell he's from Newfoundland.
Yeah, totally.
But he doesn't sound like someone from St. John's.
Yeah.
And someone from Danny Cleary's doesn't sound like someone from St. Anthony. Right. But Coldwater Cowboys is literally encompasses the whole line, and the storylines go from like Twillingate to Cornerbrook to like St. John's to Southern Shore. And I was going, Jared, it's great. I said, if you want me to say center heis, then I've got to add an H onto every vowel sound. An apple's a happle, an orange is a orange. Like I got to do that. But if there's the guy, like I said, I'm sitting in his house right now, my house now, Tony Fonspaulo, right? I said, I can do that because we grew up imitating him. And I did. Before I left, I had a bit of an accent like this anyway, right? I talk pretty fast. But with Fonz, he's got a slow draw, like, where are you at, boys? Look at Ryan, he's on the mainland playing. So we used to do that, and all I did really was speed up his accent because I can do it without even thinking about it.
Right.
So I was like, Jared, so the great thing is that often they'll have the lines written, but I get to like twist them around. And I would never insult. Like people often go like, at this point, I've had a couple of dozen acting roles, some bigger than others, but I would never like, people go, do you ad lib? I'm like, that is such an insult. Unless you're one of the producers, or there are situations like if people want that, the director will say, okay, give me a shot. Okay, we got it. Now let's do a third one and have a bit of fun with it. Then I know to ad lib.
Sure.
But I'm not going to go into a show that's written basically on wordplay. I wouldn't do Arrested Development and start ad libbing. It's an insult. But for my character, I do get to kind of Newfoundlandese the lines up a little bit. So it's always a little bit of fun. That also lends itself when no one knows exactly what I'm going to say or how I'm going to deliver it. Yeah. It's tough to get through the scene then too, because some Newfoundlanders got some crazy sayings, and that's part of the gag. Jared said, at first I was like, I hope I'm not making Newfoundland look stupid. He said, look, we'll never laugh at Newfoundlanders. Yeah. And you're going to be dumb like a fox. There's nothing that Hitch says is going to be what an idiot. But he said, part of the gag is that people don't understand you, so you're going to have to get there somehow. So I just kind of settled on this.
It's cool.
Awesome.
Well, you have had one heck of a journey with your life. I grew up in Canada. For a lot of people, listen, playing in the National Hockey League is what you dream of doing. In a lot of cases, that's once you do that, there are some guys, well, okay, I did it for a few games, and now that's my rest of my life is kind of over with, right? You did not take that approach. You really worked hard to get this acting going. So very proud of you. You've done a great job.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's been a very, very interesting life. And honestly, the first few years after my hockey mishaps, and there was so much expectation, man, I was tripping over my bottom lip. I thought, man, I'm washed up. I got nothing to give. I look back, man, I was like 24, 25, like just, it's impossible to see the world like I do now then. But sometimes you look back and you're like, it's good. If I hadn't played in the NHL at all, I think I would, it would probably bother me a little bit, but I got to play for the Montreal Canadiens. And you know what's great? I just told you, I played pretty recklessly. So I don't know what would have happened. I can't see me going 10 years and not getting injured badly. So I don't know what would have happened, but what I do know is that I did get to play. I got some great stories, met some great people like yourself. We're still talking 30 years later.
Yeah.
And like I said, last week, I got to play with Wendell Clark. We went on just 3 or 4 alumni tours this year, but just last week we went to Clarenville, Twillingate, Springdale, Newfoundland, Wendell Clark, Ally Afraidy, Ron Duguay, Langer, right? And so Lucien Deblois. I'm meeting Mathieu Dandino. So I'm meeting these people. You still get, I mean, I wish I was playing for the Stanley Cup with them, but I'm not.
Yeah.
And I still get to wear the Habs colors. And, this many years later, we're all friends. And I still get to meet and greet these people that are legends in the game. And what I love about hockey, people don't bring it up enough, but, in this crazy world of how now politics have driven everything so extreme, but hockey in a dressing room, it's just like I don't know. I was with Ron Duguay, Wendell Clark. Like, I know that they don't have all the same political views, but we don't give a shit. We're all hockey players. Yeah. We're all friends. Yeah. And we had a great conversation, and lots of great conversations. But I love that about it. And hockey players, there's just first and foremost, it's just sharing that ride together. There's something that you respect. It really is a fraternity. And I wish more of the world could kind of take on those, you can talk, you can have a conversation without hating each other,
Totally. Even if you haven't met the guy before, it's like your brothers, right? You've known him for 30 years or something. So, listen, thank you very much for coming on our show here. It was a lot of great stories. I really guess I didn't remember your personality from before, but you certainly have a large one.
Well, it was a long time ago, and you asked that question to look back. I mean, of course, things have changed, but I think, I appreciate that. It's been fiery, but it's more
you're living life,
adventurous than anything. And I do think, to go back, not that I want to revisit everything I talked about, but I think it was a little foggy with Michel Therrien too, because the French English thing came in.
Yeah, sure.
I can't. I'd come into the room sometimes after going to a Metallica concert the night before with blue hair. And I know he must have been thinking, that motherfucker. But again, he didn't talk. He just benched me, and I'd tell him to go fuck himself. Right? Yeah, so sure. I think we both misunderstood it. Not to revisit it, but, when you said that, I was like, I was always myself. But I could see how someone would maybe take it the other way. But I appreciate that, and I appreciate both you guys spending this afternoon with me.
Oh, thanks.
A lot of fun, Terry. Great to see you again, brother. Good job.
You too. If you ever need anything, Tom, let's not make it another 30 years.
Okay, yes. I want to get on your show.
Okay, well, you say the word. I'll give you a message after this, and we'll make it happen ASAP.
All right, awesome. Brother. Good to see you again.
Thanks, Terry. All right, Tom, I said in the intro that I was pumped about that episode, but he was just awesome. I come from TV, as you know, and he went back and became a PA. That's the lowest of the low when you're in production, and he busted his ass for 5 years. I mean, you're working the longest hours. You're getting people coffee. You're just cleaning up shit. It's the worst job, and tribute to him. He's the epitome of changing and having a second chapter. Yeah,
I really admire him. He's a gritty guy. He like you talked several times. He couldn't score goals. He had to find some way to stay in the lineup, and that was fighting everybody all the time. So yeah, I totally admire his work ethic. Man, he's been successful. I didn't realize he'd done as much acting as he's done. So
and we joke that you don't watch TV, but you have to watch Letterkenny, and you have to watch Shoresy. He's great on Shoresy, and it's a great show, and it's Canada, and it's hockey, and you got to watch it.
The Ken Hitchcock thing, I watched that video. That was hilarious.
You got to watch it. But yeah, he was awesome, and what a second chapter to his life.
Yeah, very cool, fun guy, great interview. All right, here we go. All right, Grasshoppers, thank you for listening. We had a fantastic show. We'll see you next time.
Hey, boss. You look stressed.
Look at all these holiday orders coming in. I've got enough on my plate already. I can't deal with shipping.
I think it's time for a break.
I can't. There's too much to do.
You can, because I got ShipStation to automate all of our shipping needs.
I think I heard about ShipStation on a podcast.
ShipStation is the easiest way to ship everywhere we sell online. It does all the work for us, so we can focus on growing our business. Returns are simple. Bulk order updates and automation options make order fulfillment easy, all while saving up to 84% off top carriers. It's more sales with less work.
What would I do without you?
You mean, what would you do without ShipStation?
That too.
Work less and sell more when you automate your shipping needs with ShipStation. Go to ShipStation.com and use code AUDIO to sign up for a free 60-day trial today.